Okay.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a very special online convocation of Indian Institute of Journalism and New Media. We shall formally start the session now. President Dr. George, I have the privilege to seek your permission and authority to commence the proceedings of the convocation ceremonies. And so, may I ask, do I have it?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. By virtue of the authority vested in me by the President, I now have the honor to declare that the convocation of the Indian Institute of Journalism and New Media for the graduating class of 2021 is now assembled and in session online across India on this day, the 11th of June, 2021. This convocation marks the end of a year-long endeavor to learn the art and craft of journalism. It also marks the beginning of a long and enriching journey into the professional world for you, young people. The faculty and the management at IIJNM are pleased to present the graduating class. I now request Dean Kanchan Kaur to welcome the gathering.
Thank you, Kritika. Good evening, everyone. It's such a pleasure to see all of you here, even though it's all virtually. Thank you so much for having made the effort to come. I'm so glad that Mr. Banerjee has been able to find the time to come. He's done some sterling work in the last few years, and Kritika will tell you more about it as we go along. And if I may dare say, in the last few months, he's actually raised the level of Indian journalism in the country. I also want to welcome the parents and others who are watching this on YouTube. Very welcome to our very formal, wonderful ceremony that we have every year at the end of the year, where we let the graduating class join the real world. Right? I'll hand it over to Kritika, who'll take us through it, and the convocation will proceed.
Sure. Thank you, Dean Kaur. The president of IIJNM, Dr. Abraham George, is here with us today. I request him to start the proceedings with his address.
Good evening, everyone. It's very nice to know that you are virtually present at this meeting. I am actually at another location out here in New York, and I'll be returning to India next week, but it's my pleasure to be with you. It's very early morning here, and there isn't any sunlight today on a cloudy day, and so I'm sorry if you see me as a dark shadow. I don't mean to be a dark shadow. I mean to be very much alive. But anyway, the past year has been very challenging, and this graduating class of 2021 has overcome the challenges along with the faculty through half year of online classes, and the other half, or a good part of the other half, on site classes. You have done exceedingly well in both sessions. This has been a great experiment in making sure that in ensuring that that we can run a good program remotely, and as far as students go, you took very active part, and I congratulate you for the excellent work that you have done. I want to start with just an observation that I have of being away in the United States and experiencing what the country has been going on for the last several months, if not several years. Most of the time, the media is talking about whether democracy would survive, whether autocracy will take over as a better form of government. And it is very, very surprising that in a country like the United States, this would even be a topic for discussion. And obviously, journalists are very concerned about the changes that are taking place, and you probably have read on newspapers and seen on television what is happening. The very foundation of democracy is freedom of speech, of course. Apart from the right to vote, unless you have the freedom of speech, and that includes very much the freedom that journalists have in expressing their views, explaining the facts truthfully, and even giving their opinion for public discussion. The other is the rule of law. You don't have a rule of law, then, and everything is dictated by one person at the top to his or her wishes, then you really don't have a democracy. And of course, when we talk about freedom of speech, we are talking about also the rights of individuals, citizens to express their views and have their representatives in the parliament or in the U.S. Congress, in the case, in the case of the United States, to enact laws that are consistent with the wishes of the people they represent, rather than one person at the top in an autocratic government making all the decisions for billions of people. In India, we have 1.3 or 1.4 billion people, their views, or in the United States, 330 or 350 million people, will one person, the president, decides what people should be doing. So a democracy assures that the voice of the people is heard. And journalism is a great institution. Actually, it's a pillar of democracy. Without a free press and the journalists expressing their views, we really we cannot practice democracy. We will move, like in China, President Xi decides, or Mr. Putin in Russia, one man decides everything, and people really don't have any rights. So the question here in the United States, as I observe on television and the media, is whether the institution of democracy itself is it being challenged. And this is something that all of you, if you believe in democracy rather than autocracy, it's you who are the guardians to protect and safeguard the institution of democracy, the system of democracy, and where people have the right to express their views and they are heard. And so I am very, very proud of you that you are going to be some of the future people who will decide what form of government we will have in India, whether as citizens, whether our voice will be heard. Now, we have amongst us a very, very distinguished chief guest today, Mr. Banerjee. I'm very thankful to him for being present here today. His magazine has been one of the very few the magazines that have had the courage to speak, to write, and to inform us truthfully. And that's a great, great accomplishment for any news organization. So we are very proud and happy that I'm in the presence of, we are all in the presence of Mr. Banerjee, and we thank him for being a participant at this meeting and speaking to you and giving you his words of wisdom. Now, as a journalist, you have many responsibilities. And the foremost is, of course, to inform the people. Inform the people truthfully, not put out facts, put out information as facts when they are not facts. You have to tell the truth. As opinion writers, of course, you have your opinions expressed, but as reporters, you are expected to distinguish between opinion and facts. And I hope that you have learned in these past year how to tell the people through your writings or your news broadcasts and so on, what is the best way to communicate with the public. Now, there are many ethical issues involved, and I hope you have learned about it. And I will not go into those things. And of course, you hopefully have learned also the art of communicating, writing, editing, television broadcast and radio and so on, or the internet, how to communicate to the people. And the better qualified you are and you're able to express yourself well, it will have a major impact on what the readers or viewers feel about the news that you are providing. So all of those things we have strived to familiarize you, and I am confident with the faculty that we have who are extremely committed to the institution and to you. You have learned those skills. And if there is no journalism school in India, maybe in the region, which is better than IIJNM, where there is commitment to you as a nonprofit organization, as a commitment to you to turn you into good journalists, professional journalists, not just someone who puts out some information. So I'm proud to be heading up this organization with Kanchan's help and the help of other faculty. It's been an honor for me to be speaking to you, all of you, and I hope this is a momentous occasion for you, the graduating day, and you'll go on and have a successful and worthwhile career. You have learned many skills beyond journalism, which will help you, but most of all, you'll learn to be a professional. With that, I thank all of you for this opportunity to speak to you, and I wish you good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. George. I now request Dean Kanchan Kaur to say a few words.
Thank you, Kritika. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's really a privilege to address you. We're really honored to have Mr. Banerjee here today to address our young journalists this morning. They're definitely young journalists, not just today, but they've been so since they joined IIJN. We don't call them students because we believe what we do here is give them a taste of the real world. The real world, though, is a bit unreal these days, as you must have realized. Take this convocation. So this is an event that's usually held on the green, wonderful lawns of IIJN. And today it has moved not just indoors, but into our computers, into other devices, and almost inside our heads. So the COVID world brings us new challenges to the way we do journalism. And at the same time, it offers us some answers to problems we've had before the pandemic. Like Dr. George said earlier, there are a lot more restrictions on human rights, leading to restrictions on journalists too. People in power taking this as an opportunity to bring in laws to muffle the press, not just in India, but the world over. And as if that's not enough, the economic impact is really hitting journalism. Yet this is a time, as they say, when the times are tough, then the tough get going. This is a time when good journalism comes to the fore. With an infodemic, which as the WHO chief said, raging in parallel, more people are looking towards trusted media houses for the right information. And journalists are going out there, putting their lives at risk to keep the public informed. Once again, journalism has the opportunity to return to credibility, and it's the only currency journalism has. It's true that only a few, mainly the independent media, have risen to the challenge. We still have a lot of the mainstream media very reluctant to speak the truth, leave alone speak truth to power. There are exceptions, of course, like I was saying earlier, the Outlook magazine, which under Mr. Banerjee has been doing some very sterling work. If I may say, it was one of the first to actually start questioning the government's role in the current crisis with its famous cover that said missing. As young journalists who have been encouraged, pushed, if I may say, into producing stories week after week that have made a difference to someone's life somewhere, I'm hopeful that you know what you must do in these times. You know that the heart of a story lies in the people. You know the importance of verification. You know the need to be fair and balanced. You also know the direction the media is heading. Print may not be dying in India just now, but as young people, you know how you access news. You'd rather figure out the latest updates on your phone than wait for the newspaper the next morning. Multimedia is the future, and you have already met the future in the manner in which you've done your stories, in the effort you've made to put every story online. You therefore know the path you must pursue. I'm confident that the past year has not been in vain. You've learned from faculty who walked these paths before, who've shown you how to fight the dragons and ignore the naysayers. You cannot go wrong. Whatever the story you cover, I know you will remember the basic tenets of journalism and do a great job. I wish you the best.
Thank you, Dean Kaur. It is my privilege to introduce our convocation speaker, Reuben Banerjee. Mr. Reuben Banerjee is the editor-in-chief of Outlook. He was earlier, he was earlier the national affairs editor of Hindustan Times. A journalist with more than 3 decades of experience, he has previously worked with Al Jazeera, India Today, and Indian Express. An incurable news junkie, Mr. Banerjee is particularly fascinated by anything that is interesting and significant and impacts the world. Also an author, his latest book, Naveen Patnaik, an unauthorized biography of the Odisha Chief Minister, got rave reviews. This was his second book, the first being The Orissa Tragedy, a cyclone's year of tragedy. I now have the privilege to request him to deliver the convocation address. Mr. Banerjee.
Mute.
I found my voice.
Yes.
Thank you. It's absolutely an honor and a privilege to be speaking here, particularly to such bright young boys and girls in the class of 2021. I'm absolutely thrilled and definitely honored. Though I must confess that I am also a bit, I have my doubts. Because when I was in school and college, I wasn't really particularly good in studies and gave a lot of trouble to my parents. And I still distinctly remember that in college, I used to bunk classes because I hated to be lectured. I hated to be talked down by my teachers. And here I am lecturing you. So not the perfect occasion for me, but then don't blame me, blame your faculty. But that having been said, I can still promise you that there will be a silver lining that I'm lecturing you. I wish it was a two-way conversation. It would have been so much better. You could have challenged me, contested me. We could have had a debate, a discussion, which would have possibly enriched me as well. So I'm essentially against one-way conversations. But anyway, this being the format everywhere, I settle for it. But I promise you, boys and girls, like the silver lining is that what I'm essentially going to tell you, most likely you would not have read what I'm going to tell you in any textbook, because I've never read a journalism textbook in my life. So I really don't know what's there in the textbooks. So that's a silver lining. Like, I won't bore you to that extent that you dread. But having said this, I do understand that I'm a self-taught journalist, but I do understand that we are all storytellers. And we are essential service, as a very famous India contemporary editor, Shekhar Gupta, says, we are essential services. So we hold the mirror, we speak truth to the power, and in whatever we do, whether we write a story or whether we edit a story or we record a story or we take pictures, essentially at the end of the day, we tell a story and we are storytellers. And I'm envious of you because I did not have the privilege of going to a journalism course, but I wish if I had been there, like you people have had the opportunity, my storytelling ability would have been far, far more better. Who has been my role model as the best storyteller of my life? I think it was my grandmother. I still remember after so many decades that when she used to put us to bed, she used to tell those wonderful stories. And she was an unlettered, she never went to school or college, but she had this unique ability of telling stories. And the stories still live in my mind after 40, 50 years. So just imagine with the kind of opportunity you people have had, if I or my mother had that, my grandmother had that similar opportunity, we would have been infinitely better, effective storytellers. So you should thank your parents, the ecosystem that brought you up, and your faculty for giving you this great opportunity of enabling you with all the skills that you need to face the world and get on and conquer the world. Because in this class of 2021, I am very sure that we will find eventually a couple of years down the line, we will have our star reporters here, the best known faces, TV anchors here from among you. For you, the sky is the limit because you're ready and you're raring to go. But however well equipped you may be and your faculty would have taught you and prepared you for your journey in journalism, let me tell you that it will be a very difficult journey. It won't be easy. You will have lots of handicaps, heartburns, setbacks. And I'll tell you why. It was infinitely more difficult for me because I never had a journalism background. It so happened that I met someone who happened to be a journalist and he inspired me to be a journalist. I wanted to be like him. But even before he could help me, unfortunately, that gentleman passed away. And I had no one to look up to. I had not been to a journalism school. I did not know where to start. And my only connect with the media at that point of time was the newspaper hawker who used to come and deliver a newspaper in the morning. That's the only one who I knew who represented or had some connection with the media. So I didn't know where to start. And I'm telling you this because this journey of mine, nothing exceptional. I'm sure many others, everybody else would have had similar experiences. But this actually has helped me because these have enriched me and strengthened my resolve to stick to my job and do better and better. So when I was struggling and trying to become a reporter, I had this notion that I must become a journalist, a reporter, but I didn't know where to start. So friends and his friend told me that he knows someone who is a press reporter. So I could possibly go and meet him. So I met the gentleman who happened to be the chief reporter of a very small newspaper, but he was nevertheless the chief reporter. And I was desperate. I was desperate for a beginning to get an opportunity to prove myself. So I met that chief reporter, and I'm not naming him with all due respect, but I'm telling you not out of spite, but this is how your life experiences will be, possibly. I went to met that gentleman, and that gentleman looked up to me and said, "What do you want?" I said, "I needed a job as a reporter." He then gave me a flask and said, "Please get me tea." So I went out, got tea, and gave him the tea. He had his tea, looks up to me and says, "Okay, come back after 6 months." Okay, so that is how life is going to be. Like, however well prepared you may be, you will be in for rude shots. There will be editors who will be friendly, very warm, very receptive. There will be people who will be very, very rude and just cast you aside. But all this should help you to make it better, to make you more resilient. And each and every turn in your life, the twists and turns, good or bad, doesn't matter, should help you to be a better human being, because the moment you become a better human being, you qualify to be a better journalist. And this is not going to be, because I have never been into lecturing and all, and I'll try and be as anecdotal as possible. This reminds me when I was also, so I was struggling initial days, initial years. And there was this Calcutta newspaper, there was a very famous Calcutta newspaper. By then I had got a job in Hyderabad, but I desperately wanted to come back to my hometown, Calcutta. And there used to be a big newspaper then. I went and met the chief editor, a very famous gentleman. Again, with due respect to him, he looks up to me and says, okay, you want a job? Write an essay, 1,000-word essay on Bofors. If you know that arms deal controversy, Bofors 1988-89, was a huge controversy at that point of time. So he calls his secretary and says, take this gentleman to the next room, give him a piece of paper and a pen, and make him write an essay, 1,000-word essay on Bofors. So the secretary, whose name happened to be Mrs. Banerjee, shared my surname. She took me to the other room, made me sit, gave me a piece of paper and a pen, said, okay, write. I'll come back after 45 minutes and collect the paper from you. I didn't know what to write. So what do? I took the pen and paper in my pocket and walked through the other door from the other side. Matter ended. I didn't get the job. And I tried on my own. I kept trying. And it so happened that luck favored. I got one job after the other. I kept climbing up the ladder. And in a couple of years down the line, 2, 3, 4 years down the line, it so happened that I was the India Today correspondent, and these were the television days, and India Today was the magazine of the country. People used to swear by that. Very important, very influential. And I was the India Today reporter in Calcutta, a couple of years later. And then one day my phone rings, landline, of course, no mobile those days. And it was that lady, Mrs. Banerjee, who called me up. She doesn't remember me. Of course, she didn't remember me. But she wanted to invite me for an event for the newspaper. That the newspaper used to have that very famous event, annual event every year. And I, being the India Today correspondent, she said, can I come over and give you an invite? I said, please come. So Mrs. Banerjee walks in. I had a small cubicle at a corner of that office. She looks at me and then she says, I've seen you. And then she says, yeah, I remember you. What happened to your essay? You still haven't given me that essay. So I said, yeah, I'm still writing. And we had a hearty laugh. But getting a job or securing your place, your position once you're out of this college is not going to be a laughing matter. It's going to be a challenge. And as Ms. Kaur said, it's only when the going gets tough, the tough get going. So it will test your resilience. It will test you in every possible manner. And let me also caution you that you are getting into this career in this profession at a time, possibly the worst possible time. We are under attack. The media is under attack. And when I am saying that we are under attack, it's not just the physical attack. Of course, we are under physical attack. You do a story, you lose your life, or your arms and legs are broken. And according to the index, Press Freedom Index, I think out of 180 or 182 countries, we are at 142 or 143. We are doing worse than even Afghanistan. So there is tremendous degree of hostility and lack of respect for us. People don't respect us anymore. Like we consider ourselves to be essential services. We hold truth to the power. But whatever be the reason, we have lost our respect. And people have ceased to respect us. And the consequences have been deadly. And when I say that we have been under attack, and I say that that attack is only not from outside. See, there will be good governments, there will be bad governments. And there will be occasions when the government is okay with you, the media, and then there will be occasional governments which will be totally anti-media. So this will go up and down. Today we might have a good government, tomorrow we might have a bad government. But more than anything else, apart from the external factors, I think we are under attack from within more, and that is more dangerous. Like that attack from outside, I know who my enemies are. I can build my defenses and I can take preemptive measures. But when the attack comes from within, what kind of preemptive measures can you take? Like you are totally defenseless. And I explain what I mean when I'm saying that we are under attack from within. One, you are joining the profession at a time when possibly you will be denied a decent salary. The economic model of the media industry in India is broken. So please convince yourself, console yourselves that this is not the right time to get very fat salaries. In any case, we were never paid well. My first job, I had the princely salary of 750 rupees. And my father used to joke, like, when will you get a 4-figure salary? And the day my salary became 1,000 rupees, I still remember I ran to my dad and I said, finally, I have a 4-figure salary. But anyway, so rather than salary hikes, the rule in the media, in the Indian media now is salary cuts. Salaries are being rolled back. And that is how it will be, because the media business model is broken. People are not used to paying for content. Like online, you go, you read a story free. But that what you are reading, that content takes a lot of money and effort to generate. Say, if you go to my website, outlookindia.com, you will get the latest stories, analytical stories, columns, news, everything. It's a 24-hour business that people are working around the clock and generating. People are traveling. People are editing. People are shooting pictures and recording videos. But when you ask an audience, a reader to pay, the reader is not used to paying. So people are not paying. So the only other revenue that we have, existing established revenue model, they are ads, advertisements. But given the slowdown in the market, generally, and obviously accelerated by this current pandemic, the advertisements have vanished. If they have not vanished, they have shrunk. And apart from the print media, now you have the television media, and then you have the digital media. So ads are moving away from one sector to another. The ad revenue has shrunk, but there are more number of players fighting for the same share, the shrinking pie. So each one of us are making less money. And after all, we are all into profit-making business, right? See, we all have owners. Outlook is owned by someone. Times of India is owned by someone. And nobody is into charity. People have to make money at the end of the day to pay salaries and also provide for costs and then make some profit. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. So when your revenue resources are drying up, streams are drying up. So obviously it shows up in the kind of quality of journalism that you are doing. So what has happened is that costs are being cut. And that is why noise is substituting news. Noise is being passed off as news. Spectacle has replaced substance. And that is why you have tamashas and spectacles like Riya Chakraborty, Justice for SSR. And I'm saying this because another 3 days, it will be 1 year of SSR's death. Sad, untimely death of that young, promising actor. But I think what was even more sad was what followed later on. The media tamasha, the media trial, and then the hounding that happened of that girl, just because of the fact that she was a woman, and we all hounded her. Television studios and media, including print media, some of them, of us, we accused her, we tried her, and we convicted her. We were all rolled into one. And that was, it made me cringe. Like, is this the kind of journalism that we are in for? It's nothing can be worse than this. And this is where we have come down to. Every day, every headline is being turned into, weaponized into a breaking news. Whether they are actually breaking or whether they are breaking your heart, or I really don't know. And then when Riya Chakraborty passed off, then if you recollect, we went into this witch hunt of what? Bollywood mafia, drug mafia. Now, after a year, I wish to ask people who ran these campaigns and said that they are the true journalists, what happened to this SSR campaign? What finally led? What did you achieve out of this witch hunt, this Bombay Bollywood mafia or whatever? And what kind of journalism did we pursue? And because IIJM is in Bangalore, and this has been happening, like the Indian media, for various reasons, because one of the reasons is that we want to cut costs. And instead of news, we want to give you noise. We are deliberately creating these spectacles and selling them up as news stories and keeping you engaged and keeping you distracted. And Indian media has repeatedly been taking people for a ride. And I remember, because I happened to be in Hindustan Times then, 31st of December, I think it was 3-4 years back, 1997 or 1998, this incident happened in Bangalore, MG Road. On the New Year's Eve, there was an incident. And then there was a chaos, there was some anarchy. Some newspaper went to town saying that there has been mass molestations on MG Road that night. Mass molestations. And they went to town. And immediately that story got picked up by everyone else. It was amplified all across the country. And I still remember television and newspapers started running slugs. India's shame, Bangalore's shame. Bangalore was shamed overnight. And it was made to believe, everyone was made to believe that mass molestations had taken place on the MG Road that night. And I happened to be the national affairs editor responsible for coverage across the country for Hindustan Times. So I even came under pressure. My editor then said, what the hell are you doing? Like, everyone is going to town with this story. What are our reporters doing? So I really got into the story. I said, what happened? There was no proof, no video evidence. There was no photographic evidence, no conclusive evidence at all. And the then police commissioner, actually I had got in touch with the police commissioner then. And that stretch on MG Road had 190 CCTV cameras. And there were about 20,000 people that night, and that stretch packed into that stretch. I'm not denying that some incident could not have happened. Obviously, it happens everywhere in India. Terrible things happen. Everyone faces it. Molestations happen, and people do misbehave. We are a patriarchal society. It happens. And I presume that it must have happened that night, even at MG Road. But my point of contention is, did mass molestations happen that night? Was the media correct, justified in shaming Bangalore, saying it is India's shame? Was it justified? So the police commissioner tells me, and he had a very sound logic. He said there were 198, 200 CCTV cameras on that stretch. No camera caught anything. There were 20,000 people in that, packed in that stretch. So which means there were 20,000 mobile camera phones there. Nobody caught anything. But without any evidence, it did not deter the media from doing what it did. It created a controversy, kept you hooked for next 1 week or so, got TRPs, sold magazines, sold newspapers, whatever, and then fully forgot about it and moved on to the another story, which possibly they had cooked up by then. So this is where, and this is very sad, like our standards have fallen. And there is no, we talk about being the fourth pillar of democracy, that we show mirror to speak truth to power, but everything is going to be in vain if we can't put our own house in order. Nothing works and nothing will work. And that is why, like, people talk about embracing technology, that things are changing. It's social media which has taken off. Mainstream media will lose its importance. That journalists will not have the kind of influence that they have now because social media is taking over. I don't believe all that. Even if social media has democratized, I am all for social media. It has democratized the media space. Everyone with access to internet is now a journalist. Information is more free flowing. I have no objections to that. I welcome it. But I still believe that journalists and editors like me will still play a role 20 years from now, because social media without us will not have the editorial rigor. You and I provide the editorial rigor. We will run the news through the filters that are essential to distinguish between fake and genuine news. You will provide the context. You will write the headline. You will bring out the flesh, the meat out of the story. You will engage. So there will always be a role. And we will continue to play a critical role, because we minus us, there is no editorial rigor. But at the same time, I'm not threatened by social media or changing technology. See, I'll be very, very simple. I'm not a tech savvy guy. I'm old school. I didn't belong to my daughter will be as old as you are. I missed the bus. I was old school. But I see it this way, I rationalize it this way, that yesterday it was 2G, today it is 4G, tomorrow it will be 5G, and day after tomorrow it will be 20G. It doesn't matter, it doesn't bother. I'll still be embracing that technology. What I'm more concerned about is, if my own house is not in order, if journalism in India does not remain or is unable to protect its core, God save us, nothing can save us. No amount of technology or no amount of anything can help. So and mind you, if you read any newspaper or watch any television channel, and barring one or two, we are also a divided house. Generally, the quality has gone down, and we are also an increasingly divided house. Like, you watch any channel or read any magazine or newspaper, barring one or two, the news that you get is entirely wholly partisan. We are practicing partisanship. I'm either for him or I'm against him. So there will be media houses which are bashing the government every day, day in and day out. And there will be media houses which are supporting the government to the best of their ability. I have a problem with that. I'm old school, as I said, and I believe in both sides journalism. Journalism is about listening to all sides. You must represent both sides. There has to be a conversation happening. You cannot be taking sides. You cannot shut out or censor the other voice. You will have to, unless till the time the person, you cannot shut out anyone unless he is inciting violence or being abusive. His point of view is still relevant. You must hear him. And Indian media has lost somehow over the years the middle ground. There is no conversation happening. There are very few media houses which give space to both sides, which has the spine or the courage to praise the government and criticize the government when it goes wrong. We are not doing it anymore. Either we are only criticizing the government because that's my agenda, or I'm only praising the government because that is where my interest lies. And that's the saddest part, and that's the reality. And this is the reality that you will walk into when you get into the profession tomorrow, day after, or whenever you are. And it doesn't give me hope. But I am an eternal optimist. And that is why I say that apart from everything else that we need to do, that we need to fix our revenue streams, we need to earn more, we need to do good journalism, everything needs to be done. But the core thing that I think the biggest challenge that we face is we need to straighten our moral compass. We need to set our moral compass right. If we do not protect our morality, journalism has no future. We are finished. And I sincerely believe that journalism is dying in this country because we are unable to protect the morality of this profession, which otherwise ought to have served as the core of our values. We are not doing it enough. And I know that, and I'm told, and I'm often been accused that because I talk of morality, I have often been accused that I do not have moral clarity. That's very fashionable now. Because I swing both ways, because I can criticize Modi and at the same time I can praise Modi if he does something correct or right. I have often been accused that here is a guy who lacks moral clarity. Apparently, moral clarity means taking a stated position that I am for you or I am against you. That to me is not moral clarity. Moral clarity is that I have the courage of engaging both sides and then either allowing my readers to decide, or when it comes to writing an editorial or taking an editorial position, I take my position, having given space and platform to both sides. That for me is moral clarity. And I have no hesitation in saying, and we have reported this in our own magazine, Outlook. Unfortunate, there have been two occasions, twice, when we said that Modi is never going to win. Now, this is, again, I hold my editors, past, former editors in the highest regard. And I'm not saying, I'm not doubting, but this was an error of judgment on their part. In 2013, when even everyone in this country knew that Modi is going to win and he is headed for a landslide, we carried a cover story saying this man will never become the PM. We said that. So my editor at that point of time can say, all the editors who were there, they can say they had moral clarity, but that the moral clarity was wrong. So this moral clarity has no meaning for me. It's subjective. That what is clarity to you may be absolutely opaque to me. So I think for me, the time and tested principle would be to practice both sides journalism. And I'll let out a secret. Like we have letters to the editors. And every week we get quite a few letters. But then we have only 2 pages for it. So many of the letters don't get published because we don't have space. So we can say print 6 letters, but we end up getting 20 letters. But I let out a secret. If you are writing a letter criticizing me or abusing me, there are more likely chances that that letter will be published. Because there is a standing instruction with my desk, and all my editors agree that critical letters are much more interesting to read than letters which says, oh, you are fantastic, you have done a great job. So we promote letters which are very critical and which are abusive, and which says that you as an editor has destroyed the magazine. I love it when it comes to that. I love it because it really makes me sit up and take note and allows me to take corrective actions. One shouldn't be living in a bubble. Now, so once you have your moral compass set right, there are obvious things which your teachers would have told you that you should do to excel as whatever you do, as a reporter, a TV anchor, a news anchor, an editor, whatever. And what it's given and it's understood that you have to be brave, courageous. Of course, you have to be honest, because without honesty, you cannot be an honorable journalist at the end of the day. And you have to be hardworking. You have to be unlike me. And I don't want to make it very long or boring, or I still want to tell you a few stories. Like, don't become like me, because what I did, the mischiefs that I played in my younger days, any other editor now, if he catches you, will fire you straight away. You'll be sacked. One story that comes to my mind, in fact, there are two stories. I'll take 2 minutes each. I was in India today, and I was the state correspondent of Orissa at that point of time. So it was office come residence. I was all alone. Afternoon, I had a meal. I'm working, but I went for a sleep in the afternoon. It was nice, comfortable afternoon siesta I was having. Those were pre-mobile days. My bedside table, there was a landline. The phone rang. I picked up the phone, half asleep. Yes. The gentleman said, "Hi, I'm Arun." I thought it's my friend Arun. In fact, he happens to be in Bangalore. He is, I think, the number 2 managing editor of Deccan Herald now. We were roommates. So I thought it was that Arun. I said, "Come on, don't disturb me now." So I banged on the phone. Again, the phone rings. He says, "Hi, I am Arun." Again, this time I was more terse. I said, "Just forget it." I put down the phone. The third time the phone rang. And then this gentleman realized that something is wrong. I am sleeping during office hours while I should have been going out and scouting for stories and reporting. It was Arun Puri, the owner and editor of India Today. So he says, "I'm Arun Puri. And what are you doing?" I said, "Sir, I'm sleeping." I said, "How come you can sleep now?" So I looked out of the window. It was hot summer, and Bhubaneswar used to be very, very hot. And I could see out of my window. It was so sunny and hot that even the tar on the road had melted. But I had to tell something to Arun, that why am I sleeping during office hours? So the only thing that I could think of is, "Arun, you don't know. It's raining very heavily in Bhubaneswar today. It's raining cows and cat and dogs." "No, it's raining cows and buffaloes. It's raining so heavily." So Arun Puri says, "Really? It's raining?" Really, very funny. So he put the phone down. He was convinced that I had earned my afternoon siesta. But imagine if Arun Puri had called up somebody else who he knew in Bhubaneswar and had found out that I was sleeping and there was no trace of a drain. I would have been fired. I would have been sacked. And another time I came, it was a close shave for me. I was in Indian Express. I was the crime reporter in Hyderabad, because anytime you join a newspaper as a reporter, the first thing they do is they make you do the crime bit. I didn't like it at all. But you have to do it. And the crime reporter, the routine was that everyone goes home after 9, 10. It's only the crime reporter and one news editor who sits back in office. And the crime reporter keeps calling up every police station and tries figuring out what has happened, if anything has happened, till the time at 2 o'clock the paper goes to print. So every night I'll have to be there till 2. And it so happened for last 3 months that I was calling up police stations and staying back till 2. Nothing had happened. Beyond 9 o'clock, nothing had happened. So it was a futile stay for me. So one fine day, my friends in the office, colleagues, they were leaving. They said, "Hey, Ruben, come. We are going for a movie. Some Hindi movie, Amitabh Bachchan or whatever." And it was 9 o'clock. They were going for a late night show. So I thought, like, last 3 months, nothing has happened. So why don't I go today with them? Nothing will happen today as well. So I happily went and saw a movie with them. Next day morning, Deccan Chronicle used to be our biggest competitor in Hyderabad, the biggest number 1 paper. I open up Deccan Chronicle, page 1 banner, "Riots in Hyderabad, MLA shot dead." Everything has happened after 10 o'clock. And I'm watching my movie. And not a line in Indian Express. Thankfully, there was no mobile phone these days. Okay, so, and I did not go to office for next 5 days. My chief reporter by then had forgotten about what I had done. But I'm 100% sure that if I had seen him, I would have been fired. So But even in this, even in the games that we played and the mischief that we did, of course you will do, because that's your growing up years. This is how you learn, and you will do this. But the problem is when my reporters play such games and tell me such lies, I easily catch them because I have exactly uttered the same lies 30 years ago. So they find it very difficult to get past me. But you can try your luck, but don't take too much of risk, because there are some editors who are very ruthless and they will not give you a chance. So you got to do your best. And this is something, and now I will not take too much. I think I've already overshot and bored you enough. I'll wind up, but I would prefer to tell you something which again is, I can be pretty honest, sure that it's not there in any newspaper, any textbook. Yes, you need to be brave, courageous, honest, hardworking, but try and also be smart and clever and intelligent. And this is from me. My heart skipped a few beats when Kanchan Kaur mentioned missing that cover story. I don't. I did. Whatever I had to do, I have done. And this is where your smartness comes into play. Do whatever you have to do without compromising what you seriously believe in. Throw a punch, then duck, and put your head down till the time you think that it's the best time to throw another punch. Because you have to be clever. Unless you are a freelancer or on your own, if you are in an organization, it is not only yourself, it's the future of the organization. It's the whole team. There are 200, 300 people who are working for you. And for me, empty bravado has no meaning. See, after all, we are journalists. We'll have to do things. But say, suppose you are taking on a very powerful person or a powerful system. What are the chances of me winning? No, zero. One phone call and I'll be out. I'm nobody. I will not even be allowed a chance to fight, to go to battle. So, my mantra in life has been, don't compromise. Never compromise. Whatever you believe in, you should never compromise. The moment you compromise, you're dead. You're finished. But make adjustments. And the adjustments, what I mean is, when I duck, that's an adjustment for me. When I punch, that's an adjustment for me. So you have to be clever. And I'm 100% sure no textbook would have told you this. I'm telling you this. So I'm ducking now. When the next punch will be, I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, I bored you enough. And it's been a real honor and pleasure to be talking to you. All the best. Our industry needs all of you, the youthful energy, the skills that you bring in. And 100% sure that many of you, or almost most of you, will exceedingly do well in your life. And I hope to see at least some of you in my Outlook newsroom. You are welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Banerjee. It was our honor and pleasure to listen to that. Thanks again. I now have the honor to present the graduating class of 2021. I request everyone to please switch on your cameras so you can have your turn in the spotlight on this very special occasion. We should wait for a few seconds before we proceed. Okay, all right, we'll start the ceremony now. The following students received the postgraduate diploma in journalism. Akriti Sehra, Ayushi Parag Parekh, Abhishek Datta, Abhishek Saini, Aditi Mathur, Amna Masroor Karimi, Aniruddha Ravindra Yerunkar, Anjali Jairaj Vengaroth, Antara Gupta, Anusha Bose, Anusha Ramesh, Anushmi Tripathi, Aparna Singh Dio, Arpita Ajay Kumar, Arunaditya Aima, Ashutosh Acharya, Baranjot Kaur, Chaudhary Puran Vagharam, Dhruv Raghav, Ghata Rajubai Sarvaiya, Gautam Balsami, Harsh Kurup, Himanshi Akhand, Isa Khedwal, Jagirdar Akhil, Jaskiran Singh, Jauhari Manvi, Kanishka Kohli, Kivleen Kaur Sani, Mahita Auk, Nidhi Sharma, Nishita Ben Agat, Padmini Dhruvaraj, Parak Sinha, Piara Singh Dhadwar, Pooja Das, Pooja Rajkumari, Prachi Ghosh, Preshita Marwania, Priyanka Ghosh, Priyanka Suraj Wagmare, Priyansh Vijay Varghia, Queenie Rich Karmolong, Ratika Rana, Ritik Biswas, Roshni Nair, Sakshi Kaushal, Sanya Chhabra, Sayantan Chandra, Sejal Seth, Shaurya Dutt, Shravani Sinha, Shreya Sushil Asopa, Sinchita Mitra, Sindhu Nagaraj, Shreya Malik, Sudeep Kumar Singh, Sujana H, Surya Tripathi, Swati Sagarika Rao, Swati Saraswat, Tarab Abbas Zaidi, Upasana Banerjee, the following students received the Diploma in Journalism. Karthik Kottumukkala, Kritika Mehta, Sai Teja Burra, Tunir Biswas, this postgraduate diploma is also being awarded in absentia to the following IIJNM students this year. Ansari Tasmia Javed Akhtar, Dese Gowda, Shreya Matthews. All right. I now have the honor to announce IIJNM's Awards for Excellence in Journalism. We have 3 roles of awards: the role of distinction, the role of honor, and the merit list. We'll follow convention and start from the bottom, the merit list. The merit list recognizes effort made by the students through the year. For her engagement in the class, the way she is able to relate to the characters in her films, and the effort she puts in constructing narrative structures for her films, the faculty recognizes Ayushi Parag Parikh for being a dependable copy editor and reporter, and for being a live wire in the print class, the faculty recognizes Dhruv Raghav. Before I proceed, I'd like to take a moment and ask you guys to virtually clap and congratulate for your classmates. Yeah. For her consistency, commitment, earnestness, and quality of work, the faculty recognizes Pooja Das. For her dependability and willingness to learn, for constantly trying to up her game, the faculty recognizes Shreya Sushil Asopa. For his earnestness, dedication, and quality of work, the faculty recognizes Surya Tripathi. Congratulations to everyone in the merit list. Now, moving on. The role of honor. The role of honor is given to students who have excelled in a certain area of their course. His reports shed light on multiple issues in local and national locations. He even covered sports competently. For his quality work, the Excellence in Newspaper Reporting Award goes to Abhishek Seni. A student with a keen eye for spotting news, she brings to the newsroom an enthusiasm and attention to detail. For her diligence in reporting, the Excellence in Television News Reporting Award goes to Amna Masoor Karimi. For his genuine interest and the potential to come up with worthwhile political stories, the award for excellence in political reporting goes to Aniruddha Ravindra Yerunkar. For her outstanding ability to grasp the fine nuances of business journalism and for being a conscientious journalist, the Excellence in Business Reporting Award goes to Baranjot Kaur. For grasping concepts taught in class and for consistently doing excellent work over time in data journalism, the faculty recognizes Himanshi Akhand. She was first off the mark and one of the earliest to finish work on production days. For her calm efficiency, the Excellence in Newspaper Production Award goes to the dependable Nishitaben Agat. For her critical thinking capacity, the effort she put into the research for her stories and the skill to convert her ideas into audiovisual language, the Excellence in Documentary Award goes to Pooja Rajkumari. For her enthusiasm, her ability to take on responsibility, her willingness to go the extra mile, for her good news judgment, the quality of her visual storytelling, and ability for teamwork, the Excellence in Television Media Workshop Award goes to Chaudhary Puran Vagharam. For her sharp observations and the ability to construct a well-reasoned argument, the award for excellence in opinion and editorial writing goes to Tanya Chabra. No lock could deter her enthusiasm during the lockdown phase. For excellence in reporting on field, off-field, real, and virtual, the Excellence in Development Reporting Award goes to Sindhu Nagaraj. For taking on stories that first appeared to be too large to chew and then writing them succinctly and easily, the Excellence in Multimedia Reporting Award goes to Sindhu Nagaraj. Now, moving on to the role of distinction. These are the topmost awards given only to one student in each stream: print, multimedia, and broadcast. All right, then these are the big awards. Now, her consistently good work, both at reporting and production, her never say die attitude and cheerful acceptance, and professional execution of any work given to her will make her an asset to any organization. The top multimedia student of the year is Himanshi Akhand. Congratulations, Himanshi. For producing interesting and topical stories and for enhancing the overall quality of the Observer with her excellent and extensive reporting, the top print student of the year is the Ernest Mahita Auk. For her excellent work ethic, her never say die attitude, ability to apply what is taught, and the excellence of her work and the life she brings to all the work she does, the top broadcast journalist of the year is Roshni Nair. Now, before we conclude our convocation ceremonies, I now have the honor to recognize and request Roshni Nair to deliver the valedictory address.
Good evening, batch of 2021, parents, teachers, and everybody else present here. This ceremony is not just about celebrating the fact that we finally earned our diploma. It's also about looking forward to what the future holds and grabbing every opportunity we might find exciting in our journalistic endeavors year on. Starting from watching everyone on tiny little boxes on the laptop one entire semester, to running around the media lab and boardroom conducting edit meets for production, our batch has seen and experienced it all. I still remember the first day at campus when on-site classes began early January this year. I was so nervous and excited to meet all of you in person. We all had butterflies in our stomach and a zillion dreams to chase. I'm so glad that the management decided to have us in Bangalore. On a personal note, the last few months on campus has been nothing less than life-changing for me. I learned how to ride a two-wheeler. I learned how to speak in Kannada. I went on a 4-kilometer trek to the Makali Durga Hills. And I also learned that I was capable of shooting and editing an entire 7-minute film all on my own. So for me, it was really important that the college had us on campus, and I could not be more grateful. Some of our seniors I spoke to from the previous batches had warned me of all the dreaded deadlines and workload that was waiting for me at IIJNM. They told me, you will be doing all the things you thought were impossible, but guaranteed all the blood, sweat, and tears will be worth it in the end. Now that we all are graduating, I could not agree more. I believe the one motto IIJNM should go by is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. The college stepped in and broke our little happy sheltered bubble and taught us so much more than just meeting deadlines and curating news. This college has prepared me for the world outside in ways that will stay with me for the rest of my life. From being more comfortable with their students calling them by their names, to holding our hands and walking us through all our journalistic adventures, our teachers have truly been there for us through thick and thin. I remember when a bird flew right into the window and fell crashing into the extended ceiling of our classroom. This fine morning, on a nice sunny day like Kanchan ma'am would say it, ma'am was so composed, poised, and put together while the entire class lost it. She was also immensely proud of Padmini for having caught the entire commotion on camera and told her she is what represents a true journalist. Nothing I say will ever do justice to all the emotions gushing through us right now. We're going to miss our sneaky strolls to Akkas. We're going to miss breaking the news first in What's in the News class. We're going to miss the chai coffee breaks in between classes. We're going to miss the 3s and 4s and the 9s and 10s we scored during the news quiz, the bus rides to the metro station during beats, the little discussions and games in the basketball court. We're going to miss fighting with the guards every time the electricity went off in the hostel. And the broadcast students are definitely going to miss troubling Sureka ma'am after every small inconvenience experienced while chasing a story. I think our first semester at IIJNM represented a humongous jigsaw puzzle. It was not too long ago when the uncertainty of acquiring a job and deciding a career was presented in front of us. Most of us were nervous, anxious, and scared to the bone. During the commencement ceremony of our batch, I clearly remember the dean telling us how special our batch was owing to the pandemic. I'm certain that what made our batch so special was the way in which the institution and the students came together to make the most out of whatever little we had, regardless of whether it was online or on campus. The first semester was a puzzle because just like a jigsaw puzzle, we had to find all the right pieces that fit in the right loops and sockets. One wrong piece here and there and the entire puzzle gets mixed up. At the same time, we all know the second semester at IIJNM represented a complete and final picture of a smartly worked and put together jigsaw puzzle. We went from begging each other for story ideas to boasting about who had more story ideas in due time. We learned how the newsroom is a cumulative effort of each and everyone present and not a one-man show. What's baffling is how tremendous our growth was. From covering 3 stories in the first semester alone, we were producing more than 1 story a day during our dailies week. At IIJNM, the most important lessons are learned outside the classroom, while chasing people for stories that matter to everyone and not just yourself alone. Before I conclude my speech, I would like to thank my family for being so supportive and for encouraging me to take up every challenge IIJNM threw at me with vigor. I would also like to thank my friends and our wonderful faculty. Without all of you, I would not be where I am today. Thank you for giving us wings and teaching us how to fly. I choose to leave you with some words of wisdom by Michelle Obama that read, "In an uncertain world, the only real currency in life is time-tested values like honesty and integrity, empathy and compassion. That is, treating people right will never, ever fail you." Our graduation caps soar high, in my mind, of course. Thank you for all our memories. This is Roshni Naya signing off.
Oh.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Nair. I now recognize and request my fellow alumnus Tushar Kaushik to say a few words on behalf of the alumni.
Thank you, Kritika. Hello, everyone. I'm Tushar. I work as a sub-editor at the Union Express newspaper in Hyderabad. I graduated from IIJNM in 2015, so I've been working in journalism for 6 years now. And first of all, congratulations to all the students. I hope you all learned a lot and also enjoyed yourself while you did so at IIJNM. In fact, it certainly seemed like you did, listening to Roshni just now. My batch also, I think, certainly did. My memories of IIJNM involve as much the media lab as the basketball court, as much the classrooms as the hostels, the amphitheater as well, and the shop down the road, which I think is still called Akaz, if I'm not wrong. And as Kanchan mentioned earlier, how can I forget the green, wonderful lawns? What are these 6 years that I worked that taught me about journalism? It can be a lot of hard work and a lot of fun, sometimes simultaneously. That's what I feel. Yes, there are drawbacks too, as Mr. Ruben Banerjee also mentioned. But I hope that the pros outweigh the cons. If they do, that is what will drive you. On the lighter side, it's also one of the cooler professions. In a mixed group, you are automatically assumed to be more interesting if you're a journalist rather than, say, an IT person. With all due respect to IT people, they're also great too, I'm sure. My one takeaway has been that the reputation of journalists in India, especially, is currently very, very bad. You will already know the problems that most Indian media outlets have. Mr. Banerjee also mentioned them. In fact, you would have learned about them during the course too, I think. But I hope you don't let that get you down even one bit. In fact, if you don't do all those things that the media has become notorious for, in spite of being pushed to or tempted to follow suit, and as Dr. George said, you remember the responsibility you have as a journalist, you will stand out. So our collective negative reputation is an opportunity at an individual level to excel. For me, another important takeaway has been the fact that we can really make a lot of difference with our work It could be a small difference. It could be something like a civic story which helps out the residents, because the authorities take action after your story, or it could be something much bigger that causes a furrow that holds people in power accountable. And that is the one thing that really drives me and a lot of people I know who are in journalism. And I hope that you also get to experience this aspect of them. I will wind up with that. Good luck to all of you. And I hope you remain as excited and passionate when you work as you were at IIT. Thank you.
Thank you, Tushar. I now recognize and request my fellow alumnus Tushar Goenka to say a few words on behalf of the alumni. You are on mute, Tushar.
Can you hear me now, Kritika?
Yes, please go on.
Perfect, sorry. Thank you so much for that, Kritika, and good evening to my fellow journalists. I'm overwhelmed by everything that I've honestly heard till now, but let me also tell you that it is an extreme privilege to be speaking in front of you all today, and honestly, a full 180-degree flip. I remember from my position not too many years ago, I'd sit on the other end of these speeches and, not take away too much. In retrospect, I think I should have taken more. But nevertheless, when I was offered this opportunity, I froze, to be very honest with you. And, I thought to myself, Tushar, what knowledge can you even impart to a batch that is graduating in the midst of a global pandemic? I said to myself, Tushar, flip the offer. Tell Girish to make you sit amongst the graduating trainee journalists, and they'll probably be able to tutor you more. Honestly, pat yourselves back on your back. You've managed to put out a Citycast bulletin, publish stories on the Newsnet, print out the observer, finalize soft copy, all while working remotely. Honestly, I'm in the market for tips on how to deliver flawlessly. I remember how we would all skip countless meals and argue like cats and dogs just to finalize the news flow and everything else that followed. I still remember a few batchmates would scramble when there were a few tweaks in the final agenda because there was a bulletin due in a few minutes or a few hours. I particularly remember this story. We were all just finalizing our stories, and Ashwath walks up to the media lab, just to take a look at all the video stories. He goes up to this one particular batchmate, and he sits down and says, I want to take a look at the story. He just watches it and says, I think there is something off about it. We thought about it for a split second, but then, we thought it could be fixed. So we weren't concerned. And then we see Ashwath zooming into his screen, and then, he just opens his workspace. He zooms into this particular footage and selects it and just deletes it all. And he says, there it's fixed. And we're all just left speechless. We don't know what's next because we have a bulletin due in the next 20 minutes or so. And now we're one bite and a few B-rolls short. But Ashwath, he didn't bat an eyelid. I mean, he just continued business as usual and just walked around asking if anyone else's story needed to be checked. My God, good old days. Again, a huge shout out to you guys for more than just pulling through. Like Roshni was mentioning, these were trying times and you're all ripe for the taking now because newsrooms are adapting to the post-pandemic normality and coping with unprecedented events. And all of you are perfect fits. Take it from me. Yes, I'm sorry. I understand that these words have been thrown around a lot, but you will get a fair share of these words being thrown around at you in the newsroom as well. Hopefully for not too long. I thought it was over, but it looks like it's going to stay for a while. While we are at it, let me also warn you, there is a while before you experience the insane newsroom chaos because we are all going to be working remotely for a while now, but I promise you it will be worth the wait. I cannot imagine your urge to be out there and already start chasing stories. A little birdie also tells me that you have been trained on newer topics like creating graphics. And I think that is a fantastic trait to have because the dynamics and asks are constantly evolving at newsrooms, and you won't be redundant in 2 years from now into your dream job. An example for me would be as a reporter, I work at Reuters. So what happens at Reuters is we have a dedicated team that would churn out graphics as and when required. But given that we're all working remotely, everyone already has too much on their plates. So now what happens is the onus falls back on the reporters to, finalize the graphics and the story at the same time. So there was a constant need to upskill. And I think that would be my 2 cents to you. Please don't spare any effort in upskilling. It only gives you a better edge over your peers and makes you a complete reporter. To quote from the famous Australian singer Lenka, she says, "All I want to be is everything, everything at once." I know it is unusual to be quoting from a pop song, but things have changed, and what is normal now anyway, right? So, and I'd also be lying if I said work and everything related is exactly how it was pre-COVID, because the days are longer, the deadlines are the same, and the completion time and deliverables are unaltered. There is leniency, yes, there is no denying that, but there is only so much a company can do. They've got to keep functioning and keep business as usual to stay afloat. So bear in mind, take up the first opportunity that comes your way. Don't be picky. Don't say I want to be in a broadcast newsroom or with a paper only. I am a broadcast student, but I have never worked anything TV related in my 3 years career. On a concluding note, if I may, I would really advise you to please go back and mend your relationships. Put your ego away. Retrace your path to that one bittersweet rapport you have with that one particular person or with a group. Sit them down, laugh out your differences. I swear it will be worth every effort. Your real world networking starts here, and you'll only do each other a favor by burying the hatchet. 2 years down the line, it'll all seem so petty, so trivial for holding on to a grudge so insignificant, if I can say. And for all you know, actually, this one person might hold the key to your dream job or your dream company. Take it from me, your application gets 50% more visibility if you're referred by an existing employee in an organization. You may shrug it off now, but if you choose to not set things straight, there will be a day when you'll want to retrospectively fix things, but it will be too late. Also, remember, something very similar applies to your faculty members here at IIJNM. You will be surprised to see the kind of assistance you are provided once you're out and about. You will want to be on the receiving end of these favors. So if you think there is something that needs fixing, it should have been done yesterday. That's it. That's about it from now from me. Keep dancing, stay well, stay safe. Thanks.
Thank you, Tushar. By virtue of the authority vested in me by the President, I now declare that this convocation has ended and is thus dissolved. We will now run a video reel of your memories of the last year for a couple of minutes. You may leave the meeting when you've had your fill. I'm given to understand that our chief guest has pressing business to attend to, so he will leave the meeting now. Thank you, Mr. Banerjee.
Happy birthday. Thank you, Amna. Hi, Arun. Say hi. Good?
Hello to students of the IIJNM. I'm very pleased that my friend Rakesh Nair is addressing you all and speak to you about journalism and new journalism at a time when a quality independent media has never been more necessary.